The bone needle and sinew thread, how humans survived the Ice Age. Can you believe that the world's first needle wasn't made of iron, but of animal bone? Can you imagine that the thread that saved our ancestors' lives wasn't made from cloth or silk, but from the sinew of animals hunted in the wild? And it was this bone needle and sinew thread that helped humankind survive the harsh Ice Age, where the cold could kill anyone in a matter of hours. When you think of sewing, you immediately think of metal needles, fabric thread, or a modern sewing machine. But 30,000 years ago, humans had none of those things. They lived in a world of ice and snow, where the difference between life and death was sometimes just a layer of hide to shield them from the wind. Just imagine, if they hadn't had the tools to sew animal skins together, the human race might have gone extinct during the Ice Age. Today's video will be a journey back in time, back to the moment our ancestors invented the tiny bone needle and the seemingly simple sinew thread. But these became crucial survival tools, turning the skill of sewing into a weapon of survival. This isn't just human history, it's the story of the ancient origins of the craft of sewing that you love today. The weapon that helped our ancestors conquer the Ice Age wasn't a sharp spear, but something incredibly familiar in your sewing box today. This seemingly simple technology was the line between life and death, determining whether our species, Homo sapiens, would survive or be wiped out forever in the cold, like our Neanderthal cousins. In this story, we won't be hunting mammoths. Instead, we will embark on the most spectacular journey back in time to discover the great story of the bone needle and sinew thread, the silent revolution that wove the future of all humanity. Welcome, sewers, designers, and souls who love fabric. Today, let's set aside the quiet hum of industrial sewing machines, the multicolored spools of thread, and the gleaming steel needles. Look at this tiny object. It's perfect, isn't it? But have you ever wondered how our ancestors, in a world of only ice, stone and bone, managed to sew? Imagine a world buried under kilometers of thick ice. Temperatures regularly dropped to -30, -40 degrees Celsius. The greatest enemy was not the saber-toothed tiger or the giant bear, but the White Death, death from freezing. The Neanderthals, our cousins, also knew how to use animal skins for cover, but they simply draped them over their bodies. The smallest gaps were a death sentence when the icy wind blew through. So, what made the difference? Why are we here today, and they are not? The answer lies in a great invention, the ability for custom-fit tailoring. And to do that, they needed two things: a needle sharp enough to pierce thick hide, and a thread strong enough to bind the pieces together. The journey to find these two treasures is an epic of survival, intelligence, and the limitless creativity of our ancestors. Let's begin our journey back 30,000 years, inside a cave in what we now call Siberia. This was a fortress against the White Death, and their only weapons were fire and animal hides. Meet Akka. She is her family's survival engineer. Her task is to turn the hide of a freshly hunted animal into a suit of armor against the cold. And it was a horrific job. First, she used a flint stone to scrape off the fat and flesh, then stretched the skin to dry. But to soften this wood-hard hide, they had to use their own saliva. They would chew the skin for hours, day after day, wearing down their teeth and making their jaws ache. Every piece of clothing they wore was soaked in sweat, saliva, and blood. But the hardest part was yet to come, joining these pieces of hide together. Their tool, a stone awl. It didn't pierce the skin, it ripped it. Each hole it punched was a weak point, too large, allowing the cold wind to get in and making the seam incredibly easy to break. Their thread, usually thin strips of leather, was too thick and stiff to pass through. Aka's young son is shivering from the cold. His cloak has a large tear in it. Aka must patch it before nightfall, but she is helpless. The stone awl slips. She tries to tie the two torn edges together, but it only makes the tear wider. The child lets out a dry cough. Despair is clear in Aka's eyes. She helplessly watches her child's precious warmth slowly escape through that hole. And then, in that moment of utter desperation, an idea sparked. Aka looked at the pile of leftover bones from their meal. She picked up a splinter from the leg bone of a snowbird. When it broke, it formed a point, sharper than any stone she had ever sharpened. What if she could make a hole? A very small one. Human history is shaped by moments like this. aka took the bone splinter and tried to pierce a scrap of leather. Swish! The bone slid through cleanly, leaving a tiny, neat hole. The first breakthrough had arrived, but the second problem remained: how to get the thread through this minuscule hole. And then the greatest idea of all flashed. Why not have the thread pass through the tool itself? With unimaginable patience, Acker used a sharp flint point to drill into the end of the bone fragment. Hours passed, and then, crack. A tiny hole was drilled through perfectly. She carefully threaded the end of a sinew through it. It was a perfect fit, and there it was. The first-eyed needle in human history. For the first time, humans could sew in the true sense of the word, aka mended the tear on her son's cloak in minutes. The seam was tight, with no gaps for the wind to penetrate. The child stopped shivering, warm and safe. This invention didn't stop at the needle. Our ancestors also perfected the thread. They realised that the sinew from a reindeer's leg, after being dried and pounded, could be separated into hundreds of tiny, incredibly strong fibres. And the most ingenious part, animal sinew swells slightly when it gets damp. When they sewed, these sinew threads would expand, sealing the very needle hole they had just passed through, creating seams that were almost waterproof. The bone needle and sinew thread, the perfect combination. The sewing revolution had begun. Humans started making multi-layered clothing, trousers, gloves, hats, and shoes. They used this technology to create tents, bags, and even kayaks. It was this sewing technology that fueled the Great Migrations, helping humans conquer the entire planet. So, what is its legacy in our world, in your closet today? The story of Acker and the bone needle is not just about survival, it's about a beginning. Imagine a 30,000-year journey. From Acker's hand with her bone needle, we see it transform into the bronze needles of the Egyptians, then the iron needles of the Middle Ages, until the sewing machine was invented, and finally, into our hands today. From a tool of life and death, the needle has become the paintbrush of civilization. It has woven identities through traditional garments, modern dresses, and haute couture gowns. And that legacy now rests in your hands. The next time you sit at your sewing table, take a moment to pause. Look at your tiny steel needle. It is the descendant of the bone needle that saved our ancestors. Feel the soft spool of thread. It is the culmination of a long journey from a strand of reindeer sinew. And most importantly, when you sew a dress for your daughter or make a gift for someone you love, the motivation that drives you, the care, the love, the desire to protect, is the same motivation that drove Acker all those years ago. The technology has changed, but the heart of a sewer is eternal. When we look back at history, you might be surprised. Humanity did not survive because of muscular strength or sharp claws. We survived thanks to our intellect and creativity, including seemingly small inventions like the bone needle and sinew thread. Each of those stitches not only joined pieces of hide, but also connected hope and life through long winters and harsh blizzards. Sewing today is art, fashion design, and beauty. But remember, its origin was a call for survival. The tears of a mother holding her child in the cold, a breathless moment when an entire tribe faced death, and the burst of joy when they found a way to seal a seam in animal skin. It was in this harshness that humans learned to turn raw materials into hope. This is not just an archaeological tale, but the origin of every shirt, every seam, every piece of needlework you see around you. If you were moved by this story, just imagine how many other wonderful secrets about our ancestors are waiting to be discovered. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because one small click today can open up a great journey for you. A journey back to the roots of humanity, where simple stories held the power to change history. Let us be your guide, bringing you stories from the dawn of time, where every needle, thread and stone carried the power of survival.